into the world of rare American coins and the fascinating story of Australia's 20-cent coins, where history, value, and rarity collide to reveal treasures hidden in plain sight. The history of the Australian 20-cent coin is a journey that begins in the mid-20th century, when Australia made the bold decision to convert its currency system from the old pound, shillings, and pence structure to the modern decimal system that aligned with global standards. The new decimal currency was officially introduced on the 14th of February in the year 1966, a day that became known as C-Day or Changeover Day when Australians across the continent exchanged their familiar but outdated coins for new coins that represented a modern economic vision. And among the new denominations introduced was the 20-cent coin, a coin that quickly became one of the most important circulating coins in the nation. The Australian 20-cent coin was struck in cupro-nickel, a durable alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel that gave it strength. And a silver-like appearance, the coin measured 28.5 millimeters in diameter and weighed 11.3 grams, making it a substantial coin in the hand. Its large size and durability ensured that it would be widely recognized and accepted in everyday commerce. The obverse design featured the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, created by Arnold Machine. This regal portrait was the official effigy of the monarch adopted in 1966 and remained on Australian coins for decades, symbolizing continuity with the British Crown, while also reflecting Australia's independent identity as a modern nation. The reverse of the 20-cent coin was perhaps even more distinctive. It featured the image of the platypus, one of Australia's most unique and beloved animals. This design was created by Stuart Devlin, who was appointed as the official coin designer for the new decimal series. Devlin wanted to showcase Australian wildlife and culture on coins, and the 20-cent coin with the sleek image of the platypus gliding through water was an immediate success. The design carried deep national symbolism, reminding Australians of their natural heritage and identity, while also creating international recognition for Australian coinage artistry. In the early years of minting, the 20-cent coin was struck in very large numbers by both the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra and the London Mint to meet the urgent demand of the nationwide currency conversion. The first year of issue in 1966 saw tens of millions of coins produced, and these became the foundation of everyday commerce in the country. As the years progressed, mintages would vary depending on demand, economic conditions, and population growth. While the standard circulation strikes of the 20-cent coin are familiar to millions of Australians and collectors around the world, certain years stand out as key rarities. For example, the 1966 20-cent coin has several notable varieties, including those struck in London, which display minor differences in design and striking quality. Compared to the Canberra issues, these varieties are carefully studied by numismatists and collectors who specialize in decimal coinage. One of the most famous rarities is the 1983 20-cent coin, of which only small numbers were struck and not released into general circulation. Most examples were included in mint sets, and as a result, high-grade examples remain highly sought after by collectors. Similarly, the 1985 20-cent coin is considered scarce because the mintage was very limited. Again, with most examples going to collectors through mint sets rather than being widely released for circulation, this makes finding an example in pocket change exceptionally rare and desirable. Another highly prized piece is the 20-cent coin issued in 2001 as part of the Centenary of Federation series. Each state and territory received its own design, and these coins became a popular way for Australians to celebrate their national identity, and history collectors often seek full sets of these Federation coins, making them an important subset within the broader history of the 20-cent coin. The mintages of the coin also tell a fascinating story about Australia's economic growth and currency demand in the 1960s and 70s. Mintages were consistently high, reflecting a growing economy and widespread use of cash in everyday life. However, by the 1980s and 90s, as inflation and changing economic conditions influenced Consumer habits mintages declined in certain years, creating scarcity that would later be recognized by collectors. The rise of digital banking and electronic transactions in the late 20th century further reduced the demand for circulating coins, leading to even more limited mintages in modern times. Special commemorative issues also play a key role in the history of the 20-cent coin in 1995. A special 20-cent coin was issued to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. This coin featured a unique design with the UN emblem and was a departure from the traditional platypus reverse in 2001. As already mentioned, the centenary of Federation designs were issued, and in subsequent years other commemoratives continued the tradition, such as coins recognizing Australian achievements, heritage, and anniversaries. These commemorative coins often became instant favorites for both casual collectors and serious numismatists. Errors and misstrikes add another fascinating dimension to the story of the 20-cent coin. Collectors are always on the lookout for examples with double strikes, off-center strikes, or broad strikes, which occur when the coin is not properly centered in the press. One of the most famous and valuable errors is the mule 20-cent coin from the year 2000. This error occurred when a 20-cent reverse die was accidentally paired with a $1 obverse die featuring the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Ian Rank Broadley. This mule coin was released into circulation, and only a small number are believed to exist, making it one of the most sought-after and valuable decimal errors in Australian coinage history. The study of die varieties, mint marks, and strike characteristics has kept collectors deeply engaged with the 20-cent series over the decades. For instance, subtle variations in the portrait of the Queen or minor differences in the relief of the platypus design can lead to discoveries that fuel specialized collections. Some collectors build complete year sets, while others focus on rare dates, errors, commemoratives, or high-grade examples certified by professional grading services. Beyond numismatics, the 20-cent coin also carries cultural and historical significance. It became a fixture of Australian daily life, used in vending machines, payphones, and transactions across the country. Its size and feel became instantly recognizable, and for generations of Australians, it symbolized the value of small change in an increasingly modern economy. Stories of children collecting coins for treats or saving 20-cent pieces in jars to purchase larger items illustrate the deep role the coin played in ordinary lives. As Australia looks to the future with the gradual shift toward cashless transactions, the role of the 20-cent coin may diminish in everyday commerce. But its legacy as a symbol of national pride, numismatic artistry, and cultural heritage will endure. Collectors will continue to cherish key issues, rare varieties, and commemoratives, ensuring that the coin remains a cornerstone of Australian decimal coinage history. This long journey of the Australian 20-cent coin from its birth in 1966 during the Great Decimal Conversion through its decades of mintages, rarities, commemoratives, and errors represents not only the evolution of a coin but also the story of a nation adapting to modern change. The coin has become more than just metal in the hand. It is a chapter of Australia's national identity preserved in numismatic form, and as long as collectors value history, rarity, and design, the Australian 20-cent coin will remain a treasure in the world of coins. Hidden treasures, where every coin tells a story. Join us as we uncover the mystery, the history, and the true value of the rare American coins, and the remarkable Australia 20-cent 2010 coins that collectors around the world search for. The story of the Australia 20-cent coin from the year 2010 is not only a story about a single piece of circulating currency, but also a window into the heritage, culture, economy, and artistry of an entire nation. When we look at this coin, we are not simply holding a small circular disc of metal, but we are in fact connecting to decades of history that stretch far back into the early days of Australian coinage and the broader history of the Commonwealth nations. The 20-cent coin of Australia was first introduced in 1966 as part of the changeover from the old imperial system of pounds, shillings, and pence to the new decimal currency system, which came into effect on the 14th of February 1966, a day that Australians often remember as C Day or Changeover Day. The introduction of the 20-cent coin alongside the other decimal coins was one of the most significant monetary reforms in Australian history. The design of the 20-cent coin was entrusted to Stuart Devlin, who was appointed as the official goldsmith and jeweler to the Queen. Devlin became a key figure in the development of modern Australian coinage, and his work on the 20-cent coin is still celebrated to this day. On the reverse of the coin, we see the iconic platypus, an animal unique to Australia, and one of the most fascinating creatures in the animal kingdom, with its duck-bill-webbed feet and semi-aquatic lifestyle. The platypus symbolizes the uniqueness of Australian wildlife and culture. Devlin's decision to feature it on the coin has given the 20-cent coin an identity that has endured for more than 5 decades. By the year 2010, the 20-cent coin had already become a standard in Australian currency, and millions of coins had been minted since 1966, yet each year carries its own story and mintage numbers, and collectors often pay close attention to the details that make one year's issue more desirable or harder to find than another. The 2010 20-cent coin was produced at a time when the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra was not only focusing on everyday circulating currency, but was also heavily invested in producing commemorative coins and special issues for collectors and investors. The Royal Australian Mint, established in 1965, has been the sole producer of Australia's circulating coins since decimalisation, and over the years, it has built a global reputation for quality craftsmanship and innovation in coin design and production. In 2010, several important events shaped the Australian numismatic scene. One of them was the continued production of coins to mark the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, who remained the head of state. Her portrait, as featured on the obverse of the 20-cent coin in 2010, was designed by Ian Rank Broadley, whose effigy of the Queen had been introduced in 1998 and continued to be used on Australian coins until 2018. The Rank Broadley portrait was notable for its realistic representation of the Queen, with greater detail and depth compared to earlier portraits, and many collectors appreciate the 2010 issues for carrying this specific design. Another important detail to note about the 2010 20-cent coin is its composition and specifications. Like other standard circulation 20-cent coins, it was struck in cupro-nickel and alloy, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel. The coin has a diameter of 28.65 millimeters, a weight of 11.3 grams, and a thickness of 2.5 millimeters. These physical properties are consistent with the series as a whole, but it is the condition, rarity, and context of the minting year that often determine its appeal to collectors. When examining the rarity of the 2010 20-cent coin, one must consider both the total mintage and the survival of coins in higher grades of preservation. The Royal Australian Mint produced millions of 20-cent coins in 2010 for circulation, making it a common coin in everyday use. However, what makes coins from this year interesting is the presence of uncirculated and proof versions that were released in special sets for collectors. These proof coins, struck with mirrored fields and frosted designs, showcase the artistry of the platypus motif in its highest quality and remain highly sought after by collectors worldwide. Beyond its physical attributes, the 2010 20-cent coin serves as a snapshot of Australia's cultural and economic environment. At the time, during this period, Australia was navigating the global financial landscape in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. Yet the Australian economy proved to be more resilient than many other economies around the world, largely due to strong trade links with Asia and resource exports. Coins produced during these years carry the unspoken story of economic survival, national resilience, and the steady continuation of traditions, such as minting coins with native wildlife designs. As collectors examine the 2010 20-cent coin, they also place it in the larger framework of Australian decimal coinage trends, for example, the Royal Australian Mint often used the 20-cent denomination for special commemorative designs, such as the famous 1981 Charles and Diana Royal Wedding coin or the 2001 Federation coins. Yet in 2010, the Mint adhered to the standard platypus design for the circulation coin, while offering collectors commemorative issues in other denominations. This decision underscores the enduring status of the platypus 20 cent as a symbol that requires no alteration to remain relevant and iconic. For coin historians, the 2010 20-cent coin also opens a window into studying die varieties, errors, and minting anomalies, which can greatly increase the value of individual coins. Errors such as off-center strikes, die cracks, double strikes, and cuds have all been reported in various years of the 20-cent coinage, and collectors meticulously search their change for such rare pieces. While the 2010 coin is not especially famous for major errors, diligent collectors know that any coin year can yield surprises, and error coins often command strong premiums at auction. Another aspect of the 2010 20-cent coin's importance is its place in the timeline of obverse designs. As mentioned earlier, it features the Ian Rank Broadley portrait, but by 2019, the new portrait of the Queen by Jody Clark was introduced, meaning that collectors now see the 2010 coin as part of the later years of the Rank Broadley era. When looking back decades from now, this distinction will become even more significant as different generations of coinage are categorized by the obverse portraits of the monarch. Collectors from outside Australia also value the 2010 20-cent coin because of its role in international coin swaps and collections. Many numismatists around the world try to build complete sets of Australian decimal coins, and for them, each year has importance. Even common issues like the 2010 coin contribute to the completeness and continuity of a collection. The platypus design has also become globally recognizable and is often admired for its aesthetic quality, which combines movement artistry and national symbolism in one flowing image. As we continue to study the history of this coin, we see that the 2010 issue represents continuity, tradition, and craftsmanship. It may not have been a year of dramatic design changes or low mintages, yet its significance lies in its role as part of the enduring story of Australian decimal coinage. Every coin minted in 2010 and placed into circulation was handled by thousands of Australians in their daily lives, becoming part of countless transactions and exchanges, silently carrying with it the history of the nation and the vision of the artists who created it. When narrating the story of the 2010 20-cent coin, we must also reflect on the broader theme of what makes coins important to us as human beings. Coins are not merely tools of commerce, they are pieces of art, miniature sculptures of national identity that travel from hand to hand, generation to generation. And the 2010 20-cent coin is a testament to this. Truth in the years to come, collectors will continue to preserve these coins, whether in pristine mint condition or as well-worn circulated examples, each with its own unique journey. World of hidden treasures, where every coin tells a story. Join us as we uncover the mystery, the history, and the true value of the rare American coins, and the remarkable Australia 20-cent 2010 coins that collectors around the world search for. The story of the Australia 20-cent coin from the year 2010 is not only a story about a single piece of circulating currency, but also a window into the heritage, culture, economy, and artistry of an entire nation. When we look at this coin, we are not simply holding a small circular disc of metal, but we are in fact connecting to decades of history that stretch far back into the early days of Australian coinage and the broader history of the Commonwealth nations. The 20-cent coin of Australia was first introduced in 1966 as part of the changeover from the old imperial system of pounds, shillings, and pence to the new decimal currency system, which came into effect on the 14th of February 1966, a day that Australians often remember as C Day or Changeover Day. The introduction of the 20-cent coin alongside the other decimal coins was one of the most significant monetary reforms in Australian history. The design of the 20-cent coin was entrusted to Stuart Devlin, who was appointed as the official goldsmith and jeweler to the Queen. Devlin became a key figure in the development of modern Australian coinage, and his work on the 20-cent coin is still celebrated to this day. On the reverse of the coin, we see the iconic platypus, an animal unique to Australia, and one of the most fascinating creatures in the animal kingdom, with its duck-bill-webbed feet and semi-aquatic lifestyle. The platypus symbolizes the uniqueness of Australian wildlife and culture. Devlin's decision to feature it on the coin has given the 20-cent coin an identity that has endured for more than 5 decades. By the year 2010, the 20-cent coin had already become a standard in Australian currency, and millions of coins had been minted since 1966, yet each year carries its own story and mintage numbers, and collectors often pay close attention to the details that make one year's issue more desirable or harder to find than another. The 2010 20-cent coin was produced at a time when the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra was not only focusing on everyday circulating currency, but was also heavily invested in producing commemorative coins and special issues for collectors and investors. The Royal Australian Mint, established in 1965, has been the sole producer of Australia's circulating coins since decimalisation, and over the years, it has built a global reputation for quality craftsmanship and innovation in coin design and production. In 2010, several important events shaped the Australian numismatic scene. One of them was the continued production of coins to mark the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, who remained the head of state. Her portrait, as featured on the obverse of the 20-cent coin in 2010, was designed by Ian Rank Broadley, whose effigy of the Queen had been introduced in 1998 and continued to be used on Australian coins until 2018. The Rank Broadley portrait was notable for its realistic representation of the Queen, with greater detail and depth compared to earlier portraits, and many collectors appreciate the 2010 issues for carrying this specific design. Another important detail to note about the 2010 20-cent coin is its composition and specifications. Like other standard circulation 20-cent coins, it was struck in cupro-nickel and alloy, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel. The coin has a diameter of 28.65 millimeters, a weight of 11.3 grams, and a thickness of 2.5 millimeters. These physical properties are consistent with the series as a whole, but it is the condition, rarity, and context of the minting year that often determine its appeal to collectors. When examining the rarity of the 2010 20-cent coin, one must consider both the total mintage and the survival of coins in higher grades of preservation. The Royal Australian Mint produced millions of 20-cent coins in 2010 for circulation, making it a common coin in everyday use. However, what makes coins from this year interesting is the presence of uncirculated and proof versions that were released in special sets for collectors. These proof coins, struck with mirrored fields and frosted designs, showcase the artistry of the platypus motif in its highest quality and remain highly sought after by collectors worldwide. Beyond its physical attributes, the 2010 20-cent coin serves as a snapshot of Australia's cultural and economic environment. At the time, during this period, Australia was navigating the global financial landscape in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. Yet the Australian economy proved to be more resilient than many other economies around the world, largely due to strong trade links with Asia and resource exports. Coins produced during these years carry the unspoken story of economic survival, national resilience, and the steady continuation of traditions, such as minting coins with native wildlife designs. As collectors examine the 2010 20-cent coin, they also place it in the larger framework of Australian decimal coinage trends. For example, the Royal Australian Mint often used the 20-cent denomination for special commemorative designs, such as the famous 1981 Charles and Diana Royal Wedding coin or the 2001 Federation coins. Yet in 2010, the mint adhered to the standard platypus design for the circulation coin, while offering collectors commemorative issues in other denominations. This decision underscores the enduring status of the platypus 20 cent as a symbol that requires no alteration to remain relevant and iconic. For coin historians, the 2010 20-cent coin also opens a window into studying die varieties, errors, and minting anomalies, which can greatly increase the value of individual coins. Errors such as off-center strikes, die cracks, double strikes, and cuds have all been reported in various years of the 20-cent coinage, and collectors meticulously search their change for such rare pieces. While the 2010 coin is not especially famous for major errors, diligent collectors know that any coin year can yield surprises, and error coins often command strong premiums at auction. Another aspect of the 2010 20-cent coin's importance is its place in the timeline of obverse designs. As mentioned earlier, it features the Ian Rank Broadley portrait, but by 2019, the new portrait of the Queen by Jody Clark was introduced, meaning that collectors now see the 2010 coin as part of the later years of the Rank Broadley era. When looking back decades from now, this distinction will become even more significant as different generations of coinage are categorized by the obverse portraits of the monarch. Collectors from outside Australia also value the 2010 20-cent coin because of its role in international coin swaps and collections. Many numismatists around the world try to build complete sets of Australian decimal coins, and for them, each year has importance. Even common issues like the 2010 coin contribute to the completeness and continuity of a collection. The platypus design has also become globally recognizable and is often admired for its aesthetic quality, which combines movement artistry and national symbolism in one flowing image. As we continue to study the history of this coin, we see that the 2010 issue represents continuity, tradition, and craftsmanship. It may not have been a year of dramatic design changes or low mintages, yet its significance lies in its role as part of the enduring story of Australian decimal coinage. Every coin minted in 2010 and placed into circulation was handled by thousands of Australians in their daily lives, becoming part of countless transactions and exchanges, silently carrying with it the history of the nation and the vision of the artists who created it. When narrating the story of the 2010 20-cent coin, we must also reflect on the broader theme of what makes coins important to us as human beings. Coins are not merely tools of commerce, they are pieces of art, miniature sculptures of national identity that travel from hand to hand, generation to generation. And the 2010 20-cent coin is a testament to this. Truth in the years to come, collectors will continue to preserve these coins, whether in pristine mint condition or as well-worn circulated examples, each with its own unique journey. In the year 1966, Australia witnessed one of the most significant transitions in its economic and cultural history, the changeover from the British-influenced pound system to a uniquely Australian decimal currency, and among the very first coins struck to symbolize this new beginning was the Australian 10-cent coin of 1966, a coin that today not only holds monetary value, but also stands as a lasting historical artifact representing the nation's leap into modernity. To truly understand the importance of the 1966 10-cent piece, we must first take ourselves back to the world before decimalization, when Australians used pounds, shillings, and pence, a system inherited from centuries of British tradition. It was a system that, though functional, had grown increasingly outdated and cumbersome as global trade and the influence of modern economies advanced. Many nations had already shifted toward decimal currency systems that made calculations simpler and more efficient, and Australia, in the mid-20th century, realized that if it were to thrive economically in a modern world, it needed to abandon its old ways. The government under Prime Minister Robert Menzies and later Harold Holt pushed forward with the bold plan to introduce decimal currency, and on February 14, 1966, a day remembered as Decimal Day. Australians woke to a completely new money system. The pound was replaced with the dollar and cents, and with it came a fresh range of coins, including the 10-cent coin, which would soon become one of the most widely used coins in the land. The design of the 1966 10-cent coin was entrusted to Stuart Devlin, a master craftsman and artist whose designs would become iconic symbols of Australian life. Devlin chose the image of a lyrebird for the reverse of the coin, a bird native to Australia, known for its extraordinary ability to mimic sounds from the natural world, as well as man-made noises, such as camera shutters, chainsaws, and even human voices. The lyrebird represented not only the beauty of the Australian environment, but also its uniqueness, something that set the nation apart from others in the world. The obverse of the coin bore the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II, sculpted by Arnold Machine, reinforcing Australia's status as a constitutional monarchy, while also signaling the country's ties to the Commonwealth. What makes the 1966 10-cent coin especially significant to collectors today is that it was among the very first coins produced in mass under the decimal system, minted in both Australia and abroad, to ensure there were enough coins to serve the public. The Royal Australian Mint in Canberra began production, but so too did the Royal Mint branches in London and the Royal Canadian Mint in Ottawa. To meet the enormous demand, the sheer volume of coins struck in 1966 was staggering: over 30 million pieces from London, over 20 million from Ottawa, and hundreds of millions from the Canberra Mint. In total, more than 200 million 10-cent coins were produced in that very first year. But within this vast mintage lies the intrigue, the rarity, and the stories that excite numismatists around the world. Because not all 1966 10-cent coins are equal collectors. Today are fascinated by small variations, mint marks, and striking errors that transform what was once a simple pocket change coin into a rare and valuable piece of history. One of the most famous aspects of the 1966 10-cent is the matter of distinguishing where it was minted. While no official mint marks were placed on the coins, experts and collectors have learned to identify London strikes, Ottawa strikes, and Canberra strikes through careful study of details, such as the shape of the numbers, the sharpness of the lettering, and subtle differences in die preparation. These distinctions make collecting the 1966 series a rewarding challenge for those with sharp eyes and deep interest beyond the mint origins. Error. Coins from 1966 have become especially prized. Examples include misstrikes, double strikes, and off-center pieces, each of which reveals the imperfections of mass production at a time when machinery was being pushed to its limits to meet national demand. Another layer of fascination comes from the broader context of the time. Australia in 1966 was stepping out of the shadows of its colonial past and seeking its own identity. The very decision to introduce decimal currency reflected the desire for independence, efficiency, and a uniquely Australian system of commerce. The 10-cent coin thus became not just money, but a marker of cultural transformation for millions of people. Imagine the Australian citizen of 1966 reaching into their pocket and pulling out shiny new coins for the first time. Instead of shillings and florins, they now held coins denominated in cents, a system that was modern, international, and reflective of a young, confident country. This sense of national renewal was embedded in every coin that changed hands. The lyrebird itself was a brilliant choice of symbol for the new era, a creature so distinctly Australian that it could not be mistaken for anything else. Its intricate tail feathers and proud stance communicated beauty, resilience, and uniqueness, qualities that Australians of the 1960s were proud to embody today, more than half a century later. The 1966 Australian 10-cent coin continues to circulate. Albeit in smaller numbers, many have been worn smooth from decades of use. Others have been preserved carefully by collectors, and still others have found their way into auction houses, where rare varieties can command prices far above their face value. Numismatists study the coin not only for its collectible worth, but also for what it tells us about the era, the politics. The technology and the culture of a nation in transition, one cannot ignore the technical aspects of the coin, either struck in copper-nickel alloy measuring 23.6 millimeters in diameter and weighing 5.65 grams. It was designed to last, and indeed many examples from 1966 remain in remarkably good condition. The durability of the coin is a testament to the quality of Australian minting practices at the time, and to the foresight of those who understood that these coins would need to withstand generations of handling. For the historian, the 1966 10-cent is a gateway into the story of decimalization, the intense public education campaigns, the jingles, broadcast on radios and televisions, teaching Australians how to convert shillings to cents, the debates among politicians, the technical challenges of producing hundreds of millions of coins, and the excitement and confusion of everyday Australians. As they navigated the new system for the collector, the 1966 10-cent is a foundation piece. It is a starting point for a journey into Australian numismatics and an essential coin for any serious collection. Its varieties, its errors, and its historical context make it endlessly fascinating, and for the general public it is a symbol of a time when Australia made a bold leap forward, embracing change while honoring its traditions in the image of the monarch. The 1966 10-cent coin then is not just a piece of metal. It is a story, a history lesson, and a cultural artifact, all rolled into one, from the bustling minting floors of Canberra, London, and Ottawa to the pockets of millions of Australians, from the debates in Parliament to the jingles. On the radio, from the intricate lines of the lyrebird's tail feathers to the quiet dignity of Queen Elizabeth's portrait, this coin carries within it the voices of a generation and the spirit of a nation in transformation. The Australian 10-cent coin is one of the most fascinating pieces of modern currency in the Southern Hemisphere because it combines history, artistry, culture, economics, and national identity into a single small disc of metal that passes through the hands of millions of people every single day. Yet behind this humble coin lies a story that stretches across centuries, from the earliest days of British colonization of Australia through the Federation of the Australian States in 1901 and finally into the great transformation of the mid-20th century, when the country moved away from the old system of pounds, shillings, and pence and embraced the decimal system, a reform that forever changed the nation's currency and gave birth to the 10-cent coin we know today. To understand the Australian 10-cent coin, you must first travel back to the origins of Australian money itself in the late 18th century, when the British established a penal colony in New South Wales in 1788. At that time, there was no official local currency, and trade was carried out using bartering foreign coins and even rum as a form of payment. As the colony grew, it became clear that a stable coinage system was necessary, and Britain began supplying coins, but shortages persisted, and by the early 19th century, the famous holy dollar and dump were created from Spanish silver coins to fill the void. This improvisation was the first true Australian currency, and it laid the foundation for a national monetary identity that would eventually evolve into the 10-cent coin. As Australia progressed into the 19th century, gold discoveries in the 1850s transformed the economy, and gold sovereigns and half-sovereigns circulated widely. But all of this money was based on the British pound system, which divided currency into pounds, shillings, and pence, a confusing and cumbersome system for ordinary Australians by the time of Federation in 1901, when the colonies joined to become the Commonwealth of Australia. The question of currency reform was already on the horizon, yet it would take more than 6 decades before decimalization would finally arrive. And when it did, the 10-cent coin was born. The year 1966 was a turning point in Australian history. It was the year the nation officially abandoned the old imperial system and introduced decimal currency under the new system. The Australian dollar replaced the pound, with $1 equal to 100 cents. The 10-cent coin replaced the old shilling, and because of this connection, it carried not just monetary value, but also symbolic continuity, linking the past with the future. The coin was struck from copper nickel, giving it a bright silvery appearance and measuring 23, 60 millimeters in diameter, weighing 5.65 grams. It was designed to be practical, durable, and instantly recognizable in circulation. But the most striking feature of the Australian 10-cent coin is its design on the obverse side. You find the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. As Australia is part of the Commonwealth, her likeness has appeared on all coins since decimalization, though her portrait has been updated several times to reflect her age at the time of each redesign. The reverses of coins, however, were uniquely Australian, and the 10-cent coin is adorned with an extraordinary creature, the lyrebird designed by Stuart Devlin, the goldsmith and jeweler appointed as the first official Australian coin designer. In 1963, the lyrebird was chosen because of its distinctive tail feathers that resemble the shape of a lyre. An ancient musical instrument, Devlin's depiction captures the elegance and complexity of this bird that is found in the forests of southeastern Australia. The lyrebird itself is an icon of Australian wildlife, famous for its incredible ability to mimic sounds from chainsaws to camera shutters to the calls of other birds. The decision to place this bird on the 10-cent coin was more than decorative. It was a statement about Australia's unique environment, its deep connection to nature, and its determination to project a national identity distinct from Britain and other former colonial powers. Devlin's design has endured for decades, becoming one of the most recognizable images on Australian currency. Over the years, the Australian 10-cent coin has seen very little change compared to other denominations. Its size, metal content, and reverse design have remained largely consistent since 1966, but the obverse, portraits of Queen Elizabeth II, have evolved. There was the youthful effigy by Arnold Machine, introduced at decimalization, followed by Raphael Maklouf's more mature portrait in 1985, then Ian Rank Broadley's design in 1999, which depicted the Queen with greater realism, and finally Jody Clark's portrait introduced in 2019, which shows her wearing the royal diamond diadem. Each of these portraits not only reflects the passage of time in the Queen's reign, but also anchors the coin in its place within the Commonwealth tradition. Collectors of Australian coins prize the 10-cent denomination for several reasons. One is the rarity of certain years when mintages were low. For example, the 2011 issue had an extremely small circulation, mintage of just 7 million coins, making it highly sought after by numismatists compared to the hundreds of millions typically minted in other years. In addition, proof issues, special releases, and error coins with misstrikes or double stamping also attract collector interest. Some varieties, such as those struck with slight design flaws, can command prices far above their face value in the collector's market. Beyond rarity, the 10-cent coin tells a deeper story of Australia's journey in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. During the 1960s, when decimalization occurred, Australia was asserting itself as a modern independent nation, balancing its historic ties to Britain with its new place in the Asia-Pacific region. The coinage reflected this transition by retaining the monarch on one side and distinctly Australian imagery on the other. The 10-cent coin thus became a pocket-sized ambassador of national identity, reinforcing every day to millions of citizens the idea that Australia was unique, resilient, and forward-looking. As decades passed, inflation reduced the purchasing power of the 10-cent coin, but it never disappeared from circulation. In fact, it has proven remarkably resilient, unlike the 1-cent and 2-cent coins, which were withdrawn from circulation in 1992 due to their low value. The 10-cent coin continues to circulate, actively used in vending machines, small transactions, and as essential change in cash-based payments. Its endurance demonstrates the practicality of its denomination size and weight and the affection Australians have for their coinage system. Economically, the 10-cent coin represents a balance point in currency policy, small enough to facilitate minor transactions, yet not so small that its Production costs outweigh its usefulness over the years. Debates have occasionally arisen about whether to discontinue it, especially as digital payments expand, but the 10-cent coin persists, partly because of tradition, partly because of its practicality, and partly because of its cultural value as one of the iconic symbols of Australian money. When looking at the history of the 10-cent coin, you cannot ignore the artistry of Stuart Devlin. His work on the entire first series of decimal coins has been celebrated worldwide, and the 10-cent lyrebird design stands out as one of his finest achievements. Devlin went on to design coins and medals for countries around the globe, but his Australian series remains his masterpiece. The coin, therefore, is not just money, but also a piece of art history, a testament to how design can embody a nation's values and environment. Today, collectors, historians, and everyday Australians continue to study, admire, and exchange the 10-cent coin. It remains a link between generations, a reminder of the great decimalization reform of 1966, and a celebration of Australian wildlife and craftsmanship. The coin you might find in your pocket or purse today is not just worth 10 cents, it is worth decades of history, centuries of context, and countless stories of how Australia built its national identity through something as simple as a small piece of copper nickel. And, as we look into the future, with King Charles III's portrait soon expected to replace Queen Elizabeth II on Australian coinage, the 10-cent coin is once again about to undergo a transformation, reminding us that coins are living history, always evolving with the times, yet carrying forward the weight of the past. The Australian 10-cent coin is therefore not only currency, but also culture, heritage, art, and legacy, a mirror of a nation's journey from colonial outpost to modern independent state. In the world of numismatics, every coin tells a story, and some stories are so layered that they transcend mere metal and engraving to become windows into history, politics, economy, culture, and national identity, and the Australian 10-cent coin of 1980 is a prime example, a piece that may seem ordinary in daily transactions, yet carries with it a long lineage of design decisions, minting practices, historical shifts, and cultural symbolism that together paint a vivid portrait of late 20th century Australia. To understand the importance of the 1980 Australian 10-cent coin, one must first step back to the very origins of the decimal currency system in Australia for generations. Australians used the British pound system, a complex arrangement of pounds, shillings, and pence. But in 1966, the nation undertook one of the most significant monetary reforms in its history, when the Australian government officially introduced the decimal currency system modeled after the global trend toward simplification and modernization. In that transformation, the 10-cent coin became one of the key denominations designed to replace the florin, which was equal to 2 shillings or 1/10 of a pound. Thus, the 10-cent coin carried forward not only a new identity within a new monetary system, but also a continuation of value that Australians were already familiar with in their everyday lives. The design of the 10-cent coin is perhaps one of the most elegant and enduring motifs in Australian coinage. It was created by Stuart Devlin, the highly respected goldsmith, jeweler, and coin designer who was later knighted for his contribution to art, and design. His vision for the coin captured the lyrebird, an iconic Australian species renowned not only for its physical beauty, but more importantly, for its astonishing ability to mimic sounds from the natural environment as well as human-made noises. The lyrebird symbolized the uniqueness of Australia's fauna, but it also represented adaptability, resilience, and continuity, qualities that resonated deeply with the Australian spirit. Devlin's design was simple, yet sophisticated, emphasizing natural grace over complexity, and his choice ensured that the 10-cent coin stood out as a national symbol that could be appreciated both domestically and abroad. By 1980, when our coin in question was struck, Australia was in the midst of important social and economic transitions. The decade was defined by challenges of inflation, changes in industrial productivity, debates over cultural identity, and an evolving relationship with global markets coins struck in that year, including the 10-cent piece carry the mark of this context. They were minted in large quantities by the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra, a facility that had been established in 1965 specifically to handle the new decimal coinage program. The Royal Australian Mint was not only a production house, but also a reflection of Australia's sovereign pride. In minting its own coinage after decades of dependence on British mints, the 1980 mintage of 10-cent coins reached into the tens of millions, ensuring that the coin became one of the most widely circulated denominations in the country. And yet, collectors and historians pay close attention to this year for subtle variations and minting quirks that distinguish certain examples from the general mass. The composition of the 1980 10-cent coin followed the standard specifications introduced. In 1966, it was struck in cupronickel, an alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel, which gave it both durability and a distinct silvery appearance. The weight was set at 5.65 grams with a diameter of 23.6 millimeters and a reeded edge, the obverse. As with all Australian coinage of the time, featured the effigy of Queen Elizabeth II. This portrait was the work of Arnold Machine, a distinguished British sculptor, whose depiction of the young queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara became a standard on Commonwealth coinage from 1966 through to the mid-1980s. Thus, the 1980 10-cent coin not only bore an Australian national symbol on its reverse, but also projected the constitutional monarchy on its obverse, tying together the dual identity of Australia as both a modern independent nation and a member of the wider Commonwealth of Nations. The 1980 10-cent coin's story deepens when we explore its role in commerce and everyday. Australian life coins are more than tokens of value. They are the silent companions of daily exchanges, whether used to buy a newspaper ride, a bus pay for a phone call, or hand to a child for a treat. The 10-cent coin was omnipresent and reliable. For Australians of the late 20th century, it was small enough to be easily carried, yet significant enough to matter in small purchases, and in many ways the rhythm of life in 1980s Australia can be felt in the clinking of these coins in pockets and purses from Sydney to Melbourne to Perth. Each coin carried unseen fingerprints and personal histories, and in this sense, every 1980 10-cent coin is both an artifact of national history and a vessel of personal memory. For collectors, the 1980 issue holds a special place, not because it is exceedingly rare in ordinary form, but because of the search for high-quality examples. Mint state coins, proofs, and error strikes in particular. Proof coins struck with extra care at the Canberra Mint. For collectors have become highly prized, showcasing the full detail of Devlin's lyrebird design with mirrored fields and frosted reliefs. Mint errors, such as off-center strikes, double strikes, or variations in planche quality, add yet another layer of fascination as these mistakes transform ordinary circulating coins into unique collectibles commanding prices far above their face value. The hunt for these variants keeps numismatists engaged and ensures that the 1980 10-cent coin continues to generate curiosity and scholarship. Historically speaking, the coin also reflects the evolution of Australian society in the post-war decades. By 1980, Australia had become more urbanized, more multicultural, and more deeply connected to global trade. Yet it also sought to emphasize its unique identity and natural heritage. And the choice of the lyrebird on the 10-cent coin continues to remind citizens of the delicate balance between modernization and tradition, between economic pragmatism and cultural pride in classrooms and coin collections alike. The 1980 10-cent piece becomes a teaching tool, a reminder of the 1966 decimal reform, a lesson in design symbolism, and even a way of discussing the monarchy's presence on everyday objects. The broader legacy of the 1980 10-cent coin extends to its role in shaping how Australians viewed their own coinage over the decades. The design has remained virtually unchanged, a testament to its timelessness in a world where many nations repeatedly alter their coinage. The enduring image of the lyrebird is proof of the design's strength. It is an anchor point of continuity through changing times, surviving inflation, economic recessions, technological shifts, and even the slow decline of physical coin usage in the 21st century. Digital payments may dominate today, but the 10-cent coin remains legal tender and still carries the same proud imagery. First envisioned in the 1960s every time someone encounters a 1980 10-cent coin. They are quite literally holding a piece of 20th century Australia preserved in copper nickel. Thus, the Australian 10-cent coin of 1980 is more than just money. It is history condensed into metal. It is art accessible to all. It is a mirror of society and economy and culture at a pivotal moment in Australia's journey. And whether it lies in a collector's album in a cash register or forgotten in a drawer, it silently carries the legacy of a nation at a crossroads between past tradition and future ambition. And that is why, when we hold the 1980 10-cent coin, we are not just holding a coin, we are holding a story. A world where history and money meet, where every coin tells a story and every detail could unlock hidden value. Welcome to Rare American Coins, where today we uncover the secrets of the Australia 20-cent coin from 1971. Today we begin a deep journey into the fascinating story of the Australian 20-cent coin from 1971, a coin that on the surface seems like just another piece of everyday change, but in truth carries layers of history, design, cultural influence, minting technology, and collector intrigue that together create a narrative worth exploring for hours. Without pause, we are going to peel back the layers of this coin from the birth of decimal currency in Australia to the precise year of 1971 and the factors that shaped both the coinage and the society that used it. To understand the 1971 20-cent coin, we first have to go back to 1966, the year Australia transitioned from the old British-influenced system of pounds, shillings, and pence to a modern decimal currency. The introduction of decimal currency was one of the most important changes in Australian financial history and was a matter of national pride and modernization. The Australian government launched a new series of coins that would become instantly recognizable: the 1 cent, the 2 cent, the 5 cent, the 10 cent, the 20 cent, and the 50-cent coin, all struck with fresh designs that reflected a uniquely Australian identity. The 20-cent coin stood out as one of the most successful of these new decimal coins, designed by Stuart Devlin, a master craftsman, jeweler, and coin designer who was later appointed goldsmith and jeweler to the Queen. The coin displayed a striking image of a platypus, an iconic Australian animal chosen for its uniqueness and its representation of Australian wildlife. Devlin's vision was not simply to create currency, but to create miniature works of art that could be carried in the pocket of every Australian. The obverse side of the coin carried the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II at the time, a young monarch whose reign symbolized continuity and connection to the Commonwealth. This portrait was designed by Arnold Machine and became one of the most widely recognized portraits of the Queen across the world. By 1971, the 20-cent coin had already become a staple in everyday life, used for small transactions, bus fares, groceries, and countless other daily needs. Yet, the 1971 issue is special for collectors because of its position in the early years of decimal currency and because of the subtle differences and minting variations that can affect value. The mintage for the 1971 20-cent coin was in the tens of millions, making it a common coin in circulation. But as always with numismatics, the story lies not only in the number struck, but in the condition of surviving examples in the presence of mint errors and in the cultural context of the time. Australia in 1971 was undergoing major transformations, socially, politically, and economically. The Vietnam War was winding down with Australian forces gradually being withdrawn. The Cultural Revolution of the late 1960s was still rippling through society with music, art, and fashion shaping a younger generation. At the same time, Australia's economy was growing, driven by mining exports and agricultural production. Within this context, the 1971 20-cent coin became not just a monetary tool, but also a small historical marker of the era. Every coin minted in 1971 has passed through hands that lived through these changes, making the coin a tiny artifact of national memory. Collectors are particularly interested in the 1971 20-cent coin, for several reasons. First are the variations in minting. While the majority were struck at the Royal Australian Mint in Canberra, some were also struck overseas to meet production needs, and these can show small differences that become fascinating for specialists. Second are the error coins. As with all minting processes, mistakes sometimes occurred, and these mistakes are treasures to collectors. Off-center strikes, double strikes, clipped planchets, and filled dies can all create variations of the 1971 20-cent that transform a common coin into a rare collectible worth many times its face value. Third is the condition of the coin. The grading of coins follows international standards from poor fair, good very fine, extremely fine, about uncirculated, and finally mint state. The higher the grade, the greater the collector value. A 1971 20-cent in pristine mint state, with no scratches and full luster, can command prices far beyond what most people imagine for such a coin. We can also examine how the 20-cent coin became a subject of nostalgia for Australians born in that era. People who grew up in the 1970s often remember using these coins for everyday purchases, and as time passes, nostalgia increases the cultural value of items from that period, making them more collectible not only in Australia, but internationally, as collectors of Commonwealth coinage and lovers of unique wildlife designs seek them out. The metal composition of the 1971 20-cent coin also plays a role in its story. Composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, it was a hard-wearing coin built to last in circulation. The use of cupro-nickel was standard for coins of that era and provided both durability and a bright silvery appearance. However, as decades passed, coins became worn and toned, giving each coin its own unique look. This aging process itself fascinates collectors because it ties the physical appearance of the coin to the journey it has taken through time. The global perspective is equally important, for in 1971, many nations were updating their coinage systems. Australia's adoption of decimal currency placed it alongside modern economies while still retaining its cultural individuality through designs like the platypus on the 20-cent coin. This is why international collectors often see Australian decimal coins not as simple currency, but as artistic symbols of national identity in metal form. As we continue to unravel the story of the 1971 20-cent coin, we also find ourselves diving into the economics of collecting. The value of such a coin depends not only on rarity and condition, but also on demand within the numismatic market. Over the decades, auctions have recorded surprising sales, where seemingly ordinary 1971 20-cent coins in high grades sold for amounts that startled casual observers. This demonstrates how numismatics is a market driven by knowledge, passion, and scarcity factors. Beyond the marketplace, the 1971 20-cent coin holds significance in education. Many coin enthusiasts first became interested in the hobby by finding old coins in change and asking questions about their origin and value. The 1971 issue often turns up in collections of beginners, serving as a gateway to the broader world of coin collecting. This accessibility, combined with hidden potential value, makes it one of the most intriguing coins of Australian decimal currency. If we zoom out further, the very act of studying a coin like the 1971 20-cent reminds us that money is never just money. It is history, art, technology, culture, and memory pressed into metal. The platypus design continues to inspire discussions about how nations represent themselves through symbols, while the obverse portrait of Queen Elizabeth reflects the Commonwealth connection that defined much of Australia's identity in the 20th century. For the remainder of this journey, we could explore the technical minting process of the coin, the machinery used at the Royal Australian Mint, the preparation of blanks or planchets, the striking process, and the quality control methods we could examine surviving. Documentation from the mint about production levels and challenges. We could analyze the spread of these coins through circulation and how many might still exist in hoards tucked away in drawers, jars, and attics around the country. We could also study the role of this coin in commerce and how inflation over the decades has changed the purchasing power of 20 cents, what it could buy in 1971 compared to today. Through all of these threads, the 1971 Australian 20-cent coin emerges as a powerful reminder of how small objects can carry great stories. It is more than a piece of metal. It is a link to the past, a collectible artifact, and a symbol of Australian identity within the broader world of coins.